Hey guys, I'm back with another video. If you remember a while back, I kind of pulled out some of these Japanese knives and I started talking about them, and I started talking about the fact that I was going to go on a sharpening journey with you all. However, I was thinking about it, and one thing that comes up with my knife videos that I kind of want to avoid here is I don't think I ever covered where I started at. So a lot of the conversations I have, because there's no point of reference, there's a lot of overlapping of questions and information and kind of things people are telling me that I've already known, but they don't know because I never talked about that. So I kind of want to back up and go from where I started to where I'm at today and what exactly I hope to accomplish. So I've got a lot of things out here on the table. This is the knife that I was talking about in that video. I did sharpen this knife. As you can see, I kind of, hold on, let's see. Back here, I kind of missed my angle a little bit. Maybe it's on this side. There we go. I kind of missed my angle a little bit, and you can see where I scuffed the blade a little bit. But I forgot to turn the stupid microphone on, so that's on video but with no sound. So I told you guys I was going to do the first sharpening on video. I did technically, but it's no need of me putting that out there because there's no sound. So hopefully tomorrow I'm going to get this one back on these stones again and get it sharpened up. But in the meantime, let's back up and let's talk about where I kind of started with sharpening and all of that. So I don't have the very first thing that I had as far as sharpening is concerned. That was a Spyderco Sharp Maker. If you're familiar with that, it kind of is a black plastic thing, looks a little bit like this, and the two rods, the two rods kind of stick up at an angle, and you kind of run your knife down both sides of it. And ironically enough, it is a medium ceramic stone and a a fine ceramic stone, which this double stuff is made of the same stuff. And that is where I started. Now, why did I not stick with that? I added the CBN diamond stones, but at the time I was using too much pressure. I tore the stones up. They were expensive. I didn't like the way it felt. It wasn't comfortable for me, I guess I should say, the way that system is used, which I know you can stick the rod in the end of that piece of plastic and use it kind of as a bench stone, so to speak. That probably would have been a lot better for me, but at the time, I really didn't have enough experience and I didn't have the patience to deal with stones that cut so slowly. So that was why I kind of got away from that. From there, I moved on to this bench rest here and these DMT stones. These are DMT double-sided stones. One of them is a fine and extra fine, which is on the bench right here. The other one is a coarse and extra coarse. So I have freehanded some in the past. Mostly I freehand my traditional knives. I would not say that I'm any type of professional. I wouldn't say that I am an expert, but I can put a decent edge on a 1095 traditional pocket knife without too much of an issue. As you guys kind of saw with this knife here, I sharpened it and I did mess the angle up a little bit, but for the most part, I pretty much hit that bevel dead on. So it's not going to be something that's totally new to me to freehand, but it will be a little bit new to me. So I went from Sharp Maker to the DMT stones. With the DMT stones, I wanted something a little bit finer, so I added a double stuff, which I also use to just touch up my 1095 traditional knives, traditional pocket knives. And with all of those things that I was using as a system at that point in time, I added a flex. Here you are. I added a flex strap. It was not a quadratic like this. Flex doesn't make this one anymore, but as you can see, I've had this strap for a long time. And I know, and that's another thing. This is what I've used. There are 5 million different ways to get started in sharpening and 5 million different types of tools you can use. A lot of people would tell you, I use an old belt, I use whatever. that is more than fine. Whatever you feel comfortable with, like I talked about the Sharpmaker. I could not stand the way the Sharpmaker felt, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that love the Sharpmaker, and Sharpmaker has been around forever. For those of you that don't know, that's how Spyderco actually got their start, was by making sharpeners, but that's a whole side note. So before you get in the comments and talk about, oh, that strap costs so-and-so, you're right. Your belt is fine. Whatever you use is fine. A piece of cardboard, that's fine. That's fine. This is about what I have used in my journey. So that was my system for a while. DMT, Spyderco double stuff, and then the Flex strap. I used the field strap at the time, but later moved on to the quadratic. I kind of grew out of this because, again, I wasn't patient. This wasn't intuitive. This had a higher learning curve. The steels I was getting into were more wear resistant. With not being able to control my angle, me, the user, and with using more wear resistant steels that were a little bit less forgiving, this was frustrating me at the time. So I backed away from that, and then I ended up going to a Wicked Edge, which I don't have the Wicked Edge that I had, but I had a Pro Pack 2, one of the original ones that I upgraded along the way. And eventually I moved from the Pro Pack 2, I think a year or two ago, to this right here, which is a Wicked Edge commercial. Again, I know, Wicked Edges cost X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. If you don't want a Wicked Edge, that's fine. I get it. KME, this, that, and the other. They work fine. Whatever works for you is the best tool. So I moved over to this. It's got plenty of stones in here. As you can see, it's got from 200 all the way up to the 1000 grit diamonds. It's got 5 micron paste, 3.5 micron paste, 1 micron paste, and half micron paste. So that's what I used forever. After a while, I added in the ceramics, which were the, let's see, over here, the 1200 and 1600 grit ceramics, if I can get them out. I might not be able to get them out. The 1200 and 1600 grit ceramics, which really, if you want a mirror edge, this is where that mirror starts to happen. And later I added these, which sadly I have not used yet. These are like the next step up in the ceramic line. So, and there's a lot of debate about, do you lap them, don't you lap them? Do they come before the 1200, 1600? Do they come after? So on and so forth. But I've kind of gotten away from the really polished edges on my pocket knives, and now I've gone over to pretty much a 600 grit edge that I usually start around 400 grit with my sharpening, move to the 600, and then I use this with, here we go, some of this spray. So this is Ken Schwartz 1 micron CBN spray. And this is just a plain old leather strap that I bought off of one of my usual suspect friends. I don't remember exactly who, but it was years ago. It's been sitting around, and that gives me a very, very good result. So with all of that being said, there's one last thing on the table that I have not talked about. And I'm gonna leave this because that's still part of my current system. So I talked to some guys. I talked to K-Knife Switzerland, Roman. I talked to Triple B Handmade, Big Brown Bear, Sean. I talked to Steve Kalari, Super Steel Steve, Chef Kalari on Instagram. And everybody had slightly different suggestions, but at the end of the day, everyone's suggestion for sharpening knives like this, kitchen knives, and even to some extent outside of that, everybody's suggestion was some type of water stone. So what I ended up settling on, and these are the stones that I'm using primarily now, and I'm going to move over to some other ones, but I don't even have those on camera because I'm going to hold off again, like I talked about in the beginning. I did a lot of rushing early on in my sharpening experience. And as I've grown in sharpening, I've learned you have to really slow down feel what the knife feels like on the stone, feel what the knife feels like off the stone as far as when you put your thumb on the knife to see if there's a burr, so on and so forth, or visually look to see if there's a burr. So I'm going to only talk about these, even though I do have some more water stones. These are Sharpening glass water stones, splash and go water stones, and I have the 8,000, which I have not used. I have the 2,000, which I have not used, and I have the 500, which I have used. And you can kind of see that. Maybe you can see that there. And this is what I'm going to be using to start my journey, and I'll grow out from there. But when I sharpen this knife here, you'll see that I'm going to use my 500 grit Sharpening stone, and maybe I'll go to 2,000. The first time I didn't go to 2,000. I just wanted to get a decent edge on here, which I was able to get, but it's time to touch this up again. So I'm gonna sharpen this again, hopefully tomorrow. And then I finished it up on the 1 micron diamond spray. Again, this was a suggestion from all 3 guys that I mentioned before, Roman, Steve, and Sean, the 1 micron diamond spray. So I have been using this across the board. I feel like even touching knives up, like now, this knife, it does have very thin geometry, so it's gonna cut pretty much regardless. But even though it's a little bit dull, if I put it on this strop here, I could bring it back to an edge that 90% of people would consider pretty razor sharp, pretty almost scary sharp. So this has been a very good addition to my kit for me. But these 2 tools will be what I'm primarily using to sharpen my kitchen knives from this point forward, and these will be the primary tools that I take on the journey with me that I hope to share with you all. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. Hopefully I'll follow this video up shortly with a sharpening video, hopefully with sound this time. But I hope to catch you guys in the next one. Remember, a lazy man carries a dull knife.